That's the boss. He doesn't look so tough. Welcome back everyone, and it's finally time to learn how to make our boss fight. We're going to be learning a lot in these next couple of videos, so here's a quick overview. We will learn what makes a good boss fight. We will be combining a variety of different attacks that we've learned so far, such as melee combos, shooting projectiles, AoE attacks, but we will learn how to make them unique to the boss and more challenging. And we will be using our damage system to its fullest capabilities. Most importantly, we will be applying everything that we've learned so far in the last 19 parts to make sure that you have a good grasp of all the different AI tools and techniques that we've been using in this series. So let's get started. Alright, so before we start building the boss fight, we need to first design the encounter, which means we need to know what makes a good boss fight. So I will now give you 5 rules that a lot of games follow in order to make sure that they're designing a good boss fight. And I will keep referring back to these rules during implementation so you can actually see how we're going to apply them in practice. Alright, rule number 1 is the setting. So boss fights are usually played out in a controlled environment. So I prepared here this little circular arena, and I also made the fog color red for more dramatic effect. And I will show you how the arena will become part of the encounter itself when we start building it. So rule number 2 is predictable but challenging. So the boss attack patterns should be predictable. The player should be able to know what the boss is about to do. You can do that through visual effects, certain sound cues, flashy animations. It's very important the player knows what's coming, but that doesn't mean you should make it easy. It should still be challenging. So even though the player knows an attack is coming, it should still be hard to avoid or hard to block. Third rule is testing the player's current skills. So the boss encounter should test abilities and skills the player has already learned so far. So if the player has been dodging and blocking attacks so far, don't suddenly introduce a new attack that they have to jump over if they haven't encountered that before. Unless you intentionally aim to introduce this new mechanic at that part of the game. But otherwise, keep it to skills that the player already knows, but again, more challenging. Fourth rule is how the boss reacts to the player. So the boss is obviously stronger than all the other enemies. So maybe they don't get staggered as easily, or they don't do a hit animation on every player attack. It's just important to give the player visual feedback that your attacks have weight, but this enemy is stronger. So that when the enemy finally does get staggered or does do a hit animation, the player knows, oh, this attack had an effect, had a stronger impact than my regular attacks. And finally, the fifth rule is the difficulty of the encounter. So the boss fight should start relatively easy or manageable so that the player can get used to the attack patterns of the boss. But as the fight progresses, the attack patterns and the fight itself should become more difficult to test what the player has learned from the start of the fight till the end of it. And of course, the ending should be the most challenging part. Alright, now with these 5 rules in mind, let's start building our encounter and see how we're going to apply them. I want to quickly announce that I'm offering a new tier on my Patreon for anyone who wants to have a one-to-one hour-long call with me every month to ask questions about game development, software engineering, or really anything else that you want. And just head over to my Patreon and check out the new Apprentice tier. Thank you. Alright, so once you have your boss arena ready, first thing we want to do is create our boss enemy type. So we're going to go to our enemies folder, right click on our base enemy and create a child. We're going to call this the BP enemy boss. Let's create a new folder, call it boss enemy, and let's put this guy in there. Alright, so open up our boss, and as soon as it opens, we want to change 2 things. So we want to make the boss look different and make the boss bigger. So the first thing is for looking different, we're going to change the material of the mesh. So I already have this, where did I put it? Actually, is it here in my materials folder? Yeah, so I already have this, the same material as the Manny uses, but I just made it red. So I'm going to use that. So then our boss is all red. And the second thing is I'm going to make the mesh bigger. So I'm going to make him like 1.25. And after we do that, we should also make the capsule itself bigger. Something like 140, and maybe here 44, maybe more, 45, something like that. And make sure that the mesh lines up right at the bottom of the capsule. All right, then he is definitely too big, this mesh, sorry, this capsule, so let's decrease the size again, 120, I think 120 is good. We're gonna have to go back and adjust this a little bit, yep. All right, yeah, I think this is looking pretty good. And if we put our boss in the world, he will look something like this. And relative to the player, the boss is bigger. Very nice. All right, now next thing we want to do is set the default values for the boss. So let's start by, well, actually click here on the class defaults and let's set the animations. So we have this hit reaction montage, and we also have the stagger montage. So stagger, I'm going to use the regular stagger that we use for our other enemies, which as a reminder just looks like this and has root motion, so the enemy falls back a bit. And for the hit reaction, I have a specific hit reaction for the boss, which is this animation. Now this is called montage axe hit reaction because I'm going to give the boss an axe as their main weapon. And we're going to see that in a bit. All right, so other defaults. So if we open our interfaces, our movement speeds. So our movement speed here, we want to override it also. So we get, what we want to do is get our character movement component, set walk speed. All right. And also return that value. And that is going to be based off of a select. What values did we have for the melee enemy? So melee, I think we keep the base ones. So the base had set movement speed, 100, 300, 500. Yeah, I think we can do 100, 200, and 350. So it's going to be bit slower. The boss is bigger, but we're not going to rely purely on the movement for the boss, and you'll also see that in a bit. And finally, the health. So I also want to override the health, and I'm going to do that in the construction script. So we get our damage system, and we say set max health, and let's set it to something like I don't know, 700. Where the rest of the enemies are 100, and then set health as well. So we're setting health and max health to the same value. And of course, you can decide to make this a variable if you want to promote it to a variable, and then you can make it instance editable by clicking on the eye icon next to the variable, and then you can edit it per instance of an enemy if you want. But for us, we're just going to keep it static here. All right. So next thing, I want to show you the weapon that we're going to give the boss. So over here in our content folder, weapons, I already have the mesh. So I modeled this nice golden axe, and I just tried to follow the golden style that we've been using for our other weapons. But yeah, I just made a very quick model. And of course, the animations, the meshes, and everything will be available to download on my Patreon. All right, so in our axe, actually back here in our base weapon, we right click and create a child, call it BP weapon axe. And we change the mesh to use our axe. I'm not going to change anything else for the weapon. but let's go back to our boss and actually wield the weapon. This is not our boss. This is our boss. All right. So if you recall, in our BPI enemy AI, we have equip weapon, and also where's unequip weapon? Unequip weapon. Double click. Okay, so I'm going to implement these two functions. So for equipping a weapon, I'm not going to have an animation for equipping the weapon. I'm just going to have the boss spawn with the weapon equipped already. First thing we want to do is spawn actor from class, choose our axe weapon. Spawn transform can just be default, so I'm gonna split. That way it just adds default values. And then we are going to get our weapon variable. Where is weapon? I could just search for set weapon actor to this, and then we want to attach actor to component. So we're going to attach our weapon to our mesh as always. So the mesh is our parent, and the socket name, I think it's hand underscore r underscore axe socket. I'm gonna double check that. So over here, search. I already created this axe socket, but the same that we've done for the other sockets as well, for the sword and the rifle, it's the same thing. So yeah, it's hand r axe socket. Let me copy it to make sure I have no typos and paste it here. Then I will snap everything to target so that it takes the location, rotation, and scale of our target. All right, then at the end, what we usually do is we just call on weapon equipped. But since we're not doing an animation, all of this is synchronous. So all of these will happen synchronously. So we want to give time for if someone is binding to this on weapon call and wants our on weapon equipped after calling equip weapon. So we're just going to do a delay until next tick. This just ensures that if you call equip weapon and then check for this event being fired, then you have time for the bind to actually happen. All right, and we're going to do the same for the unequip. We're just going to get our weapon actor, and we are going to destroy the actor. Do we need to do anything else? No, I think that's it. And then also delay until next tick and call on weapon unequipped. All right, looking good. So, well, let me show it to you first. If on begin play, I just call equip weapon, we won't be doing it from here. This is just for testing. We'll actually be doing it from our behavior tree as we always do. But just to show you, if I play now, there's our boss and his nice axe weapon. Perfect. Alrighty. Now let's remove this. Next thing is animations. So locomotion animations. So let me show you real quick. We're going to be using a lot of axe animations that I already prepared here, but we're going to be going over every one of them. So you'll see what we're actually going to be using. So the first thing we're going to look at is the axe locomotion. So this is, again, a strafe axe locomotion, similar to our stored strafe locomotion as well. So let's see how we can switch between these different ones. So opening up our ABP Mani, yeah, it's already on the locomotion. So if you go over here to locomotion and walk run, you'll see that we only have this sword strafe. So I want to check what weapon the actor is currently wielding, and based on that, change the strafe animation. So first we need to get a reference to this variable, this weapon variable. So in our event graph, I'm going to go here, add a pin. Well, let's first get our owning actor, cast to BP enemy base, and then plug that in here. All right. And then first thing we want to check is, well, we want to get the weapon. So get the weapon actor. And we want to get its class. So I just want the class of the weapon. So go over here to get class. And then I'm going to right click, promote this to a variable and call it weapon class. So based on what weapon the enemy is equipping, we're going to use a different locomotion animation. So back here in, back here in our walk run states, we're going to do a blend poses by bool. So based on a certain variable, we're going to check. So we're going to get our weapon class and check if this is equal to our, what was it called? BP sword. Yeah, so if it is equal to our sword, this is true, then we will use the sword strafe animation. Right? And if it is false, we want to still check if it's the axe or not. I just don't want to assume false is always axe. So I'm going to copy this. And then if it is false, we want to check again. So copy this also. And check now, is it an axe? And if it is true, then I'm going to get my axe blend space here and plug it into the true. And direction and ground speed will be the same. Direction, ground speed. All right. And on false, this means that you're wielding a weapon that's not a sword or an axe. We don't have an animation for this now. So our default should be the one that comes with Unreal Mannequin, which is this walk run. Yep. Let's just move all of this down a bit. Okay. So this will be our default, and this will be our ground speed. All right, that is correct. So now in our idle, we are going to delete this, paste what we copied here. So these two conditions, and check. If it is a sword, then plug in the sword. If it is not a sword, then get our axe idle. Make sure to click that it is looping, and then it will be our axe. And on false, it will be our regular male idle. All right. Now, if we look at the enemy, he is still not... Oh, he's not wielding the sword yet. Because we removed this. Let me add it back so you can see. Equip weapon. Come on, equip weapon. Yeah. So now, there you go. He's doing the axe idle stance. Nice. And I'm just going to remove this again. Okay. Oh, sorry. And one thing I just realized that I forgot to do, or I did incorrectly, was... we didn't set the variable for is wielding sword. So we have this, is wielding weapon variable. So we need to set it somewhere here. Is wielding weapon to true. And then over here to false. Because we use this condition in our behavior tree to know if we need to wield a weapon or not. All right. So now, next thing I want to do is, this is a boss, right? And they shouldn't have this tiny health bar on top of their head. Boss fights usually have the large, boss health bar on the player HUD. And this is also ties back to rule number 1 of the setting. So the entire boss setting should feel that it is impactful, that it is dramatic, it's a boss. So we're going to add a nice little health bar in the player HUD itself. So to do that, we are going to open our widgets folder and let's create a new widget here. So widget blueprint of type user widget, and we're going to call it w_boss health bar. Okay, so first thing is we always need a canvas panel. Then we need some text. Maybe if you want to add like the name of the boss. So text, and I'm going to anchor it top center here. This is 0, this is 0. Size to content, and this is 0.5. All right. And then I am going to get a progress bar, also plop it in here, also anchor it the same, reset this to 0, this to 0, and also this 0.5, but then I'm also going to push it up on the Y a bit, maybe like 50 or something. Yeah, that looks good. Actually, no, this shouldn't be anchored here. This should be anchored like this, so it takes up the full width. Oh, sorry, this is 50. This is 0. All right, so then the offset on the left and right are 0, so it takes up the full width, and positioned 50 on the Y just to give some space here between the name, which we can just call like boss fight or something. You can make this if you have multiple bosses, of course. This can be a variable, and it will be the name of the boss. So we can make it is variable and say boss name. All right, and this also is variable, and call it just progress bar or something is fine. I also wanted to look a bit different than the player progress bar, so I'm going to have it the fill type. Sorry, the bar style. No, not the bar style. What was it? The well, first the color. So if we make it percentage 0.5 here, let's have it sort of reddish. Yeah, something like that. Dark red a bit. And I want it to be rounded. So I'm going to search for rounded. Yeah, so draw as a rounded box here. So this is the background, and draw as the fill also as rounded box. So now you see the edges are rounded for both the fill and the background. All right. Yeah, and this should, yeah, the scale here doesn't matter, just making sure that it scales as I scale the widget. One last thing, this text, I want to change it to be, let's get our font, to be a bit bigger, let's say 32. Yeah, that's good. Then this, I will push it up just 70. All right, so now that we have this, previously how we set the health was using, let me show you. So we have in our damage system here, damage system, we have this health bar, right? So this is the widget, and the way we set the health is that we have on the progress bar itself, we have this percentage value bound to a function called getPercent. And this function gets our damageable actor, which is passed in here as a reference. And then we get the max health, get the current health, and then calculate the percentage. Now, a lot of people complained that this way it was causing some problems, specifically, I think, in Unreal 5.3, passing the actor as a reference. So I will show you a different way of calculating the health of a widget as well. So over here, we have this value, percent. Yeah, this value here, percent. I'm not going to bind to it. Instead, I'm just going to go over to my graph, and I'm going to create a function. So add function here. I'm going to call it update health percentage. And I'm going to also add two variables here. So I'm going to add a max health, which is a float. And I'm going to add a current health. And make sure to well, you can also add just a percentage and calculate that and pass it in, or you can add max health and current health and calculate it here. It doesn't really matter. So I'm going to get this current health. I'm going to divide it by the max health. And that gives me a percentage. And then I'm going to get my progress bar, which is a variable. So if you clicked is variable, you'll have access to it here. And I'm going to set percent. And I'm going to pass in this value. So now anytime I call update health. Oh, sorry, I added these on variables to the widget. These should be variables of the function, sorry, not the widget. So delete them. This should be variables on the function itself. Max health, float, and current health. So current health divided by max health. And you can switch the order if you want them to look better. Yeah. All right, so now anytime I call this function and I give a current health and a max health, we will change the value of the progress bar. So in the boss, when we first spawn the boss, let's stop using the old health bar. So I'm going to get the health bar here, and I'm going to say set widget, and I'm going to keep the widget empty. So this just pretty much deletes the widget that's inside here. And then I'm going to create a new widget. Actually, no, I'm not gonna do it here, and I'll tell you why just in a second. Let's first actually get the health bar to appear in our player HUD, because right now, of course, if I play, there's nothing here, right? So if I go to my, what was it called? Yeah, it's actually in this folder. Yeah, this player HUD here. What I can do is I can reserve space or put a container in my player HUD that I can inject elements into at runtime. Because of course you want to add this health bar when the fight starts and remove it when the fight ends and so on. So what I can do here is I can search for vertical box, and I'm just gonna add it here, anchor it to the top center, reset these values. And the size here is going to be relatively important. So this is scaled to, let's actually scale it to 1920 by 1080 just as a preview. And then the size of this, let's do this at 0.5, so it's aligned to the center. And the position Y, let's give some breathing room of 50. So here, how much did we give? Here we gave 50. Yeah, so we gave 50. And then the size on the X, I will make it half of the screen. So if the screen is 1920, then I'm going to divide that by 2. And by the way, you can do quick math functions here and it will calculate them for you. Yeah, so it will be 960. And now you can add stuff in this vertical box. So I'm going to make it a variable, and I'm going to call it top vertical box. And you can keep adding elements. And vertical box just stacks elements on top of each other vertically. So just as a preview, if I take this and pop it in here, then you can see the boss fight and the health bar appeared. And if we play here and we scale our screen, then this widget scales as well with the screen. So it's a nice way of doing it. But I think it's a bit too big, this this health bar, isn't it? So maybe let's scale this down a bit, this size. Maybe 30, 25. Is 25 good? Yeah, 25 is all right. Okay. And I think also the text here is a bit big. Let's make it 28. Yeah, that's better. All right, and of course you can change the value of this. If you feel it's too small, you want it to be bigger, you can make this vertical box, I don't know, something like 1100, something like that, yeah. Now, I will delete this because we're adding it here manually. We want to add it when the fight starts, right? So, when the fight starts, we want to, where is our health bar? Sorry, where's our boss? So our boss here will create the widget, but the AI controller will add the widget to the player HUD. So the pawn is responsible for creating the widget element because the pawn knows about their health, their current health, and so on. But the AI controller is the one that knows when the fight begins, right? Because we have our AI controller here that handles sense damage, handles sense sight, sets state to attacking, and so on. So the AI controller is responsible for what happens when the fight begins. So that means that if you want the HUD to be added, sorry, the widget to be added to the HUD when the fight begins, then the AI controller is responsible for that. So let's first create this widget. So we're going to create widget, boss health bar, and we're going to promote it to a variable and call it boss health bar widget ref or something. And then very important is we want to set the initial values of our health bar. So first call update health percentage with our health and max health, which are stored in the damage system. So get the damage system, get health, get max health. You can just call the variables, not the functions. And then plop them in here. You can, of course, call the functions as well that you have on your interface, but this is just cleaner and easier since we already have access to this. All right, so now that we have this widget in our AI controller, when the fight starts, we want to add this widget to the player's HUD if we're attacking a player. Now, of course, I can do it here in this set state as attacking and in the end do it, but this is only relevant for the boss, and this AI controller all of the enemies use. So, since this is a base AI controller, we can inherit from it and create a child. And this is, again, a very good use of inheritance. So I can just right-click on this and create a child blueprint and call it AIC enemy boss. And if you open it up, it won't have anything, but it does have everything that is already in the base AI controller. So now if I want to do something on set state as attacking, I can go over here to functions. Oh, sorry, don't create a new function. Go to override and search for set state as attacking. Now, if you override it, you'll see that it automatically calls the parent, which means do whatever the parent is doing, which is the base AI controller. And then after that, we'll do something else. So we'll check. Are we attacking? So if this attack target is equal to our player, is this attack target equal to our, branch is equal to our player? On true, then we get the health bar of our boss. So our boss, again, we don't have a reference to it yet. So we need to call get controlled pawn and then cast that pawn to a boss. And we'll be applying this AI controller only to the boss. So we know that this will always succeed. And then we get our health bar widget ref. So our boss health bar widget ref. And then we want to add it to the player's HUD, right? And we already checked that this attack target is equal to a player. So again, what we can do is get this attack target and cast to BP player. Actually, I don't even need to check if this is equal to player. I can just cast to player right away. That is actually easier. So cast to player. If the cast succeeds, then get the boss. And then get a reference to the HUD. So get player HUD ref. This is a variable that we have stored on the player. And this HUD now, if you recall, we added the vertical box to it, and it's just called top vertical box, and it is a variable. So we can get it. So we can say get top vertical box. And this top vertical box has a function called add child, was it? Add child to vertical box. And this add child to vertical box takes a widget as a reference. Great. One slight optimization we can do is right now, this is going to be called on every set state as attacking. We need to pass this target. But if we add it once, we don't need to keep calling it again because maybe something happens, the state doesn't go back to attacking. So we can do this once. So we can say, do this only once. All right. But there's a problem now. If we do it once and it turns out that the attack target is not the player, if for any reason you have the boss attacking someone that's not the player, then you want to reset this do once. So you can just plug the cast failed here to reset. And just to make it a bit clean, just do a reroute node and yeah, to make it visually clear. Okay. All right, so now as soon as the boss starts attacking, it will add the health bar to the player HUD. But we need to, of course, assign this AI controller. So go over here to class defaults, search for AI controller, and change this from enemy base to enemy boss. Well, no, enemy boss, yeah. All right, so right now, there's nothing in the player HUD, okay? And I can show you by starting here behind the boss, nothing in the HUD. Now, if the boss sees me, boom, they set state to attacking and the HUD appears. Great. And now, of course, the boss isn't doing anything yet because they don't have a behavior tree. So let's start adding some behavior to our boss. Now, right now, if I just search for behavior tree, if I just give him the melee behavior tree, if I do that, he's already going to start doing some things. So he's going to start moving, and he equipped the weapon because that's also part of the behavior tree. And now he's strafing around me. But he doesn't have an attack, so he's not going to attack. He's just going to strafe forever. But he does a hit reaction because we added that hit reaction montage. So all that is pretty good. Oh, one very important thing I forgot. You see now the health of the boss isn't changing, even though he's getting attacked. This is the part that's also really important relating to the health bar. We only call update health percentage once when we create the widget. We also want to call it every time the boss gets damaged. So we go over here to our take damage function. We can just also go for override, search for take damage. It's the same as double clicking this. And we're going to add a call to the parent. So do whatever the parent does in the take damage function, return everything they return. But additionally, call update health percentage. I just copied this from our begin play. All right. Oh, I have an error here. Oh, I should be calling this on our boss health bar widget, not ourself. Yeah. Okay, compile. So now, if I attack the boss, yeah, now the widget is updating. Great. So this is another way to update the widget's health, and it's a bit more performant because now we only update it when we take damage, whereas with the bind approach, it just calls on tick to see if a value has changed. So this is a bit more better for performance. All right, so now we see that the boss using the melee behavior tree has some functionality, but let's create our boss behavior tree. And let's close up some of these things. All right, so going to our AI folder, behavior trees, I'm just going to copy the melee behavior tree to start with that and call it enemy boss. All right, and I am going to delete pretty much everything here. No, we don't want strafing. All the possible attacks are going to be different. Possible attacks. Yeah, we're going to add that in a bit. So is wielding sword. Yeah, we should probably rename this to is wielding weapon because it checks for weapon, not sword. Well, why can't I delete? Is wielding weapon. So we're going to keep this. So we check if is wielding weapon, we focus the target and equip a weapon. And then once the attacking state starts, we just want to have a sequence called attack ready, where we set the movement speed to sprinting and focus the attack target. All right, and then we're gonna check all the other things later. But first, let's see here. So we want the frozen state, we don't want the investigating state, and we don't want the seeking state. So we're gonna delete these, but we'll keep the passive. So the boss doesn't investigate and doesn't seek. That means that we have to make sure that the boss doesn't ever go into these states. And that's also another reason why it's good to override the AI controller. So if we go to our boss AI controller, what we can do here is go to our functions and say handle what was it, handle lost site. So I can override this function, handle lost site, and delete the parent. So I'm not doing anything on handle lost site. We can comment here, say override to do nothing. So this means that if you lose sight, I don't do anything. Previously, of course, if you lose sight, you go to the seeking state. So if the handle lost sight here, you check, did you lose sight of your attack target? Then wait a bit and go to the seeking state. So we're not going to do that. So now let's actually start adding some attacks to our boss to have them move around and attack us. So if I go over here to my animations folder, axe, I already have a montage ready to use, this montage axe combo 1. Now we've created so many attacks throughout this series, so I don't have to bore you by creating another montage, but I'm going to explain it really quickly. It's just this axe combo animation that I got from Mixamo and retargeted to the UE5 skeleton. And I play this trail effect from the Infinity Blade asset, but I modified it to be red because the boss is red, so their trail effect should be red as well. And we have this axe swing sound. And we have a slash notify montage. Montage notify. So this combo is just 2 hits, 1 and 2. Great. So let's see how we can use it. So over here in our BP enemy, let's comment this, call it equip/unequip weapon. And let's comment this and call it health bar. All right, so now let's create a new attack. So custom event, I'm gonna call this combo attack combo 1. Okay, and I call it combo 1 because we're gonna have 2 different combo attacks. And as always, the attack takes a attack target, which is a actor. And if you recall, again, just a quick recap, our melee enemy, or really any enemy, we use our BPC attack system and we have a whole bunch of attacks already created for us. So we just have to call the BPC attacks, get the attack that we want to do, and pass in the attack info and damage. So we're going to be doing that for most of the boss attacks, but we're also going to be creating new attacks to make it a bit more interesting. So get our BPC attacks, and we're just going to call primary melee attack. And again, just a refresher, primary melee attack has 1 montage notify, which is slash. That's why I have slash here in this montage. Right, so back here, we want to get, make attack info, pass in the attack target, and the montage will be our combo 1. Radius, let's say a bit bigger because of the axe has a larger radius, let's say 40, and length a bit further away, let's say something like 250 or 300, something like that. And then damage info, also make, and say it does 20 damage of type melee. For now, let's say it can be blocked and can be parried. Shouldn't damage invincible, shouldn't force interrupt, and damage response. Now the player responds to any damage, but yeah, let's do it hit reaction for now. All right. So as always, if we want to call this from our behavior tree, we need to create an enum of attacks and then create a task in the behavior tree that calls one of the attacks from this enum. So search for enumeration. Enum, come on. And we're going to call it e_boss attacks. And for now, let's just add 1, call it combo 1. We're going to add a lot more. So if we want to do this attack in our boss behavior tree, we first need to create a task for it. So new task, blueprint base in our tasks folder. Yeah, I'm going to call it BTT boss attack. All right, so as always, event receive execute AI. And what we're going to do is just get our pawn, cast it to boss, because we know this is only going to be called for the boss. And based on the attack name that we pass into this attack, we want to choose one of the attacks. Again, same as we did for the melee and mage enemies. So we're going to add a variable called attack name, and it's going to be of type E boss attacks. Where is it? E melee attacks. No, what did we call it? E boss attacks. Yeah. And make sure to click the eye icon. That way you can pass in this variable from the behavior tree. And we also need our attack target key, which is of type Blackboard key selector. And again, also click the eye icon. So based on this name, so we can do a switch on this name. And based on what happens, of course, we now only have one, but we're going to have a lot in the future. So I'm going to move this to a separate function like we did for the mage and call it attack based on name. And it just takes our boss ref. So we don't have to cast again here. We can just get a reference to our boss, which is of type BP enemy boss. And then we get our attack name, do a switch, and based on the name, we're going to call combo 1 if it's combo 1. And the attack target, we're going to get our key, get value as actor, as always, get Blackboard value as actor, and pass it in here. All right, so now we're still in the task. So we're going to go over here and call attack based on name, pass in our boss. And once we're done, we want to bind on the event that attack has ended. So assign on attack end. Again, as a reminder, this is an event that we call when the attack montage is finished, so that we know we can call finish execute and success true. And this is what exits the behavior tree task. Again, very important that success is true. All right, again, this is, I could have copied and pasted one of the mage and enemy attacks, and the only difference is the cast, but I wanted to do it again in case someone hasn't been following. And now if I go over here to possible attacks, I can just do boss attack, attack name, combo 1, attack target, attack target. So let's see if he's going to attack me now. And he is, oh, we did not, he's still strafing. We didn't assign the boss behavior tree to the boss enemy. So click on self or on class defaults, search for behavior tree and assign the boss behavior tree. All right. Yep, now he's attacking, and I think the range is all right. Yeah, I think it's a bit too far. He's attacking me even when I'm too far. So I can block it, and I can parry it. Perfect. So I'm just going to decrease the length a bit, maybe to 220 or something. All right, so now we have our first attack. All right, so one very important thing to note is the reason why this attack is, this whole combo is one montage is to tie it back to rule number 2. It's predictable, but challenging. So whenever the boss does this attack, I know that there's going to be a second one to follow. So I can time my block to the second attack. So this is a predictable pattern that I know is always going to happen. But now there's one thing I want to show you is that while the boss is doing this attack, let me just move this way, I can interrupt him. See that? So this is because this primary melee attack doesn't set the state to not interruptible, like some other attacks do. Now I want this attack not to be interruptible, but I don't want to modify the attack itself because maybe for some enemies it's interruptible, for some it's not. So I want actually this is interruptible to be part of the behavior tree. So I want the behavior tree to decide that when I start doing this attack, I'm not interruptible. And for most of the boss attacks, the boss won't be interruptible during his attacks. So let's create a task that does that. And it's going to be a very simple task. So we just go to blueprint base again. And this task anyone can use. It's not just a boss attack. It's just, sorry, not just a boss task. So we're going to call it BTT set is interruptible. All right. And then event receive executes AI. We're going to get the pawn and we're going to just say set is interruptible. And again, this is a function we already have in our BPI damageable interface. And then we say finish execute. Very simple task. We just need to pass in the value. So this value is going to be a variable. So right click promote the variable and yeah, we can just call it value. Make sure to click the eye icon again. So now, back in my behavior tree, what I can do is, let's create a sequence here. Call it combo 1 sequence. And what the sequence looks like is first focus. So we're gonna focus the attack target. Then we're gonna set is interruptible to false, so I can't be interrupted. So regardless of what this attack does, I'm not interruptible. And then do the attack. Once I'm done, set is interruptible back to true. So now I can be interrupted again. And I don't know, maybe just wait for a second, stand still. Usually what happens in boss fights is that after an attack is over, this is your chance to attack. So this wait time, the longer it is, the easier the fight will be. The shorter it is, the harder the fight will be. So maybe as the fight progresses, you change this wait value. And this again ties to the last rule about difficulty. As the fight progresses, it should be more challenging. So you're giving the player less time to attack. All right, so now if we play, the boss focuses me and I can't interrupt him. Let's try interrupting him. Nope, he continued his attack. Again, let me show you again. Didn't get interrupted. Great. But I can still parry and interrupt him, right? Because parrying staggers the enemy all the time. So we have in our BP player, in our parry, yeah, here, we have, once we parry, we get our attack target and we say should force interrupt. So even if they're not interruptible, this is part of the damage system, this should force interrupt will make them get interrupted. And this is perfect for regular enemies. But again, tying it back to the rule about the boss enemy should be stronger and the boss enemy reacts differently to the player, we want to change this a bit. So maybe we don't stagger the boss all the time. Maybe they get staggered at a certain percentage. So maybe 50% of the time, 20% of the time, whatever. Usually what most games do is they have a stagger meter for strong enemies. So you have to block or you have to parry them multiple times for them to be staggered. And every time you parry, this meter decreases. I'm not going to implement a meter. Instead, I'm just going to do it based on random chance. So maybe 50% of the time they get staggered and 50% of the time they don't. So how do we do that? Quite simple, actually. Here in this should force interrupt, I'm going to have it true 50% of the time and false the other 50% of the time. And why am I doing should force interrupt instead of stagger? Because the boss is not interruptible. So when we parry the boss, we force interrupt, and that's why they get staggered. But if we didn't say force interrupt, but we still parry, see, I'm parrying, but the boss isn't getting interrupted. And this is good because you don't want to change the player, the behavior the player is used to. The player knows they parried, so we should still give them the visual feedback that their parry was successful, but the boss is the one that reacted differently to it. So that's why this should force interrupt is what we're going to change. So how do we do it based on chance? Quite easy, actually. I'm going to create a function here in our player and call it, just random chance. and we're going to add a variable called the percentage or percent, and that's going to be a float. And we can even limit it to be, this is a value between 0 and 1, this float value. So we're going to check, we're going to get a random float in range. This function generates a random float between 0 and 1. And we're going to check, is our percentage greater than or equal this random float? And if true, we're just going to return this value. And we're just going to call it, return value is fine. So again, we generate a random number between 0 and 1. And if the number that we are passing here is greater than that random number, then return true. So for example, back here, and I can also click on this function and say pure. That means it doesn't need an execution pin. So if I call this function here, you see it doesn't need an execution pin like this. So I pass in a 0.5% chance and plug it in here. So this means that I'm going to generate a random number, and if this number is less than 0.5, then don't force interrupt. If it's more than 0.5, do force interrupt. And since it's a random number between 0 and 1, then it's a 50% chance. So let's see how this looks like in practice. Parry, nothing happened. Let's try again. Parry, nothing happened. One more time. Staggered. Great. So you see that sometimes it'll get staggered, sometimes it won't. And this is a great way to make sure that the boss feels stronger. They don't usually react the same way to attacks as the other enemies do. All right, next thing we want to do is giving the boss the ability to block, because again, bosses should be powerful. So we want to make sure that they're able to block our attacks as well. Right now, let me unplug this. So right now, if I attack the boss, they just sit there and take damage. They do a hit reaction every time. They really can't do anything. So I'm going to add a chance, the block that we have for the melee enemy. I'm going to move it to our base enemy and have any enemy be able to block if they have a block montage. So let's see how we can do that. If I go to our BP melee enemy, this is our block. So we have this start block event. We have unsuccessfully blocked, what to do, and end block. And we have this try to block function, which again, based on a random float and a block chance, it will either call start block or do nothing. So we're going to copy all of this to our base enemy. So let's open our BP enemy base and let's start doing some modifications. So let's first copy, it doesn't really matter. Let's copy all of this to our enemy base, put it somewhere here. It's going to ask you what to do about functions that don't exist. Just say do nothing because they're about to exist soon. So end block here, if you just refresh it, it's there. This block state we don't really use anymore. We were using it before, but we don't need it. So I'm going to delete it. And everything else that is grayed out, you can just say, let me show you. So for example, this hold block timer, I can just say right click and create the variable. It will create the variable for it. And blocking state, again, we don't need it here. We don't have these on block ended. So if I compile, it's going to complain about, on block ended. So let's create that event dispatcher on block ended. Now if I compile, everyone's happy. So I should go back to the melee and delete all of this. Great. Now that this is deleted from the melee, if I go to the try to block function, you see that this one now says target is BP enemy base. That means this is reading the start block from the enemy base. Now we want to copy this as well. So take our try block. You can just click here, by the way, copy, go here and paste, and then delete it from our melee enemy. Are you sure you want to delete it? Where is it being used actually before I delete it? Find references. Oh, it's used in the take damage. Yes, so I'm going to say yes, I am sure I want to delete it. And now it says it's taking try block from the enemy base. So if I compile, it's just going to say warning because I haven't compiled this one. Oh, and block chance, this is what's the percentage that they can block. So I'm going to also create variable for it. Compile, now everyone's happy. And let's say block chance defaults at 0.25. And this can be changed per enemy. So maybe the boss has a higher one, melee enemy has a lower one, and so on. So back here in our melee, if I compile now, the warning is gone. But there's one very important thing that we still need to do, which is this montage. So now this always plays the sword block montage, but every enemy can block differently. Maybe the mage enemy blocks with a magical shield, the boss of course blocks with an axe, and so on. So then this montage should be a variable as well. So promote to variable and call it the block montage. Great, now our block function is successfully moved to our base enemy and configurable. So if I go here to my melee enemy, I have a block chance that I can change for this enemy specifically. And over here, I have the block montage, which defaulted to stored block react. And I can go to my boss now. If you want, you can also change the block chance of your boss to be higher. I'm going to keep it at 0.25. And the block montage, I'm going to change it to axe, was it react? Yeah, axe block react, which looks like this. Just plays a sound and has a muzzle flash. All right, so let's start attacking our boss and see if he blocks. Oh, wait, we forgot one very important thing. Right now in our melee enemy, we call this try block on take damage. We also want to move this call to the base enemy. So this all, I'm going to cut it. And then these we don't really need anymore. Oh, and my cat is in the way. Excuse me. And we're going to move all of this to the base. So that actually means that the melee enemy doesn't need to override this function at all. So I can just search for take damage and delete it. And as soon as you delete it, then it's the base enemy take damage that will be called. And there are also a few things that, so you see here, these are the old variables, the block chance, the block timer. So we need to also delete these. And blocking state, blocking timer, yeah. And then these ones we can't delete, of course, because they're from the base enemy, and I'm now in the melee enemy. All right, so back in the base enemy, in our take damage function, let's add the things that we just copied from here. Which just checks if the attack itself can be blocked. If it's true, try to block. If it's false, then proceed to do take damage without trying to block. All right, and that should do it. Now let's try to see if he blocks. Come on, block me. What did we set it at? 25%? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so 1 out of 4 hits should be blocked. Sounds good. Perfect. Now, before I end this, I want to show you one thing that I added in the player itself. I'm not going to go over how I created it, but I just want to show you that I added a dodge or evade that looks like this. So if I press Alt, I can now sort of do this quick teleport to avoid attacks. And the reason I did this is to make the fight a bit more dynamic. And if you want to see the code itself, you can take a screenshot or pause the video, and this is what it looks like. I'm not gonna, it's not very difficult, it's just teleporting from one location to another. It's really quite basic, and it's using effects from the Feng Mao, which is a Paragon character. So again, if you want to recreate yourself, you can just copy this code, pause the video, and copy what you see on screen here. But this is basically all of it. Alright, now that we've set up our boss and he can attack and block, in the next part we will start adding the cool new flashy abilities and attacks, which use the arena and much more. And then finally we will put all of these attacks and abilities together to build the complete boss fight. So I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you there.